First and foremost, before we begin our debate this afternoon, we've got something very important and very special for you. I'd like to introduce you, please, to Conor Warren. Conor is one of our Changemakers. He's the CEO and co-founder of Spark UK. I'll let him introduce himself and what they do, but ladies and gentlemen, Conor.
Thank you very much for having me. My name is Conor Warren. I'm 18 and I'm a mental health advocate and young entrepreneur. At the age of 14, thank you. That one person. At the age of 14, I founded Spark UK, and we're now the UK's leading youth-led mental health organisation. And we create resources and campaigns for thousands of young people across the country. We've currently got over 300 schools around the UK that use our resources. And over the past few years, we've worked with the likes of BAFTA, Dame Judi Dench, Dame Emma Thompson, Stephen Fry. The list goes on of these incredible people that have helped us and supported us. And one of the things we always say is that we want to spark conversations around mental health, and that is fundamental in all aspects of life. Media producers are currently not creating educational content fit for modern young people. Mental health was not something that was spoken about much during my school. It was not something that was taught enough. And when it was spoken about, teachers often resorted to using videos because they didn't have the knowledge themselves to be able to deliver a session on mental well-being. So instead they relied on these videos to educate the students. And I always say that this content was always outdated. I describe them as out-of-date early 2000 BBC Three documentaries. And most people I speak to said that's the polite way of putting it. And these videos for young people, they're cringy, they're cheesy, and they just offer really outdated and unreliable information for young people. And as a consequence, this means that young people aren't engaging with these videos because they don't feel like they're being represented in them. Since lockdown, young people have consumed media in a completely different way than they had previously. Media consumption has shifted from mainstream avenues such as linear TV and cinema to online and on-demand. The rise of social media platforms such as TikTok and YouTube Shorts has allowed young people to be continually exposed to a new plethora of content. Short-form content has overtaken all other avenues of content. And one reason for this is because of the attention spans are significantly declining of young people. But what do we do to place this short-form content to reach these young people? Rather than creating high-budget, hour-long content to distribute on YouTube, you should be cutting the content into shorter bite-sized videos of around 5 minutes that can be viewed through TikTok, Instagram Reels, and YouTube Shorts. As an 18-year-old myself, my screen time is way too high than it should be, and my highest screen time is on TikTok, followed by, is roughly about an hour a day, which is not good, but unfortunately that's what it is. And Instagram also is quite high, and then I very rarely actually watch YouTube now. I very rarely watch long-form content on YouTube. And through our work at Spark, we have found that young people are most engaged with content fronted by people they relate to or look up to. So this is typically from two avenues: content fronted by young people and content fronted by influencers. Long gone are the days where these traditional celebrities are engaging with young people. We did an experiment a few years ago as part of our All-Star Advent campaign, and we put 2 separate videos on TikTok, one of which was of national treasure and Hollywood actress Dame Judi Dench, and one was a short video from some comedy influencers on TikTok called Grey Skits. And to this day, Dame Judi Dench's video is sat on 321 views, whereas Grey Skits' video is sat on 41.2 thousand views. And the reason for this? Influencers are creating much more authentic content because they're controllers of what they put out. Traditional media is reactive to society by around 2 weeks, give or take, and compare this to influencers who are reactive within seconds. An influencer could record, publish, and get millions of views in the time I've already been talking to you. Influencers create an authentic-looking narrative on social media that allows young people to relate to them and look up to them. When I was 10 to 13, I was in that generation where I wanted to become a YouTuber. Every single person in my class wanted to be YouTubers. And nowadays, that's an easy reality. There are some incredible examples of how traditional media companies are slowly shifting into this new avenue. Funds such as the Young Audiences Content Fund were hugely influential in the production of youth-focused productions. As a gay 18-year-old myself, the production Big Boys, which was funded by the Youth Audiences Content Fund, that was the first time I'd seen someone like myself represented on TV. And without the Young Audiences Content Fund, there needs to be other ways to seek support for youth-focused media productions. And hopefully with a new government, I think everybody's been saying that recently, hopefully funding can be put into these new projects. But you need to think differently about how you deliver them. By providing groundbreaking productions with social platforms built in from the start, we are actively engaging with millions of young people in a unique and proactive way. However, we need to continue to get young people involved in all aspects of a production and begin diversifying the avenues in which media is distributed. You need to be actively engaging with young people from the ideation process all the way to the promotion of your product. Because without young people's ideas, you are stabbing in the dark. Young people are already leaving linear television and moving over to social media, and if you don't follow them on that move, they'll find new people. So you need to be less Judi Dench and more Grey Skits. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Conor. Conor, thank you very much indeed. It's a little bit humbling listening to what you've achieved already at your age, and you actually made Jackie cry a little bit there. I'd also like to thank Eloise Gardner for producing the Changemaker and the oversight of Matt Bowen as well. Thank you very much, both of you. Right, our debate that isn't actually going to be a debate. We might have a little bit of a ding-dong. We might discuss things in a rather energised way, but it's not going to be a traditional debate in the way that we think of debates, because 2 years ago we had a debate, and we were hugely saddened by the demise of the ACT Fund and all that meant, so that was awful. And then a year ago, we had another debate, which was titled, if I remember rightly, Public Service, Rest in Peace. And this is sort of plays on my mind quite a lot. And out of that debate, we came on to the summit in February. Anybody at the summit in February? We can't see you. Put your hands up, because we can't see you. Some of you are brilliant, so thank you. Yes, I was there. And it was telling, wasn't it? It was a moment. Today is a step on from that, because the summit was there and we discussed the crisis in childhood, the crisis in provision of public service content for children, and that duality of problem that we seem to have around finding and funding. Lovely bit of alliteration there. We just put that in for you, Frank, so it's nice and sort of arty. But no, it's serious, isn't it? Finding and funding. And that kind of leads us to where we are today, because we need to move this conversation on as an industry. And I think, as the title says, it's kind of YouTube or bust. And that bothers me in quite a deep and meaningful way. So to help me unpack this a little bit today, I am really, truly delighted to have four wonderful experts to share their experiences with you. I am going to make sure that I get everything right here in terms of job titles, because I don't want sort of to be told off later. So Laura Taylor-Williams, Head of Digital and Strategic Development at Aardman Animations. This is Laura. And next to Laura, we have Emily Horgan, who is a media strategist and quite a prolific, what did we call you earlier? We called you the...
Analytic brain.
Leisure.
The what? The brains analyst. Yeah. The brains analyst, that was it. So quite an analytical brain around all things to do with the streamosphere. So this is Emily Horgan. To my left, I have Welsh Spice, otherwise known as Jackie Edwards. Or Professor Sprout, we haven't quite decided. Jackie is a former indie producer, some of you will know from her time at the BBC, but today she's here wearing her hat from what was the ACT Fund and her mission, if you like, to ensure that public service is achieved for our children. This is Jackie. Yes, that's the Welsh Spice bit. And then last but not least, we have Frank Cottrell-Boyce, screenwriter, author, and...
Scouse Spice.
Scouse Spice. That's the sort of thing you see on Police 999.
Yeah,
Scouse Spice. No. Some of you will know Frank from his many achievements, including, he didn't want me to say this, but 24-Hour Party People. He wrote that, but that's another conversation. But more importantly, and perhaps relevant to us today, Frank is 10 days into his epoch, tenure. What do you like?
I'll go for the Taylor Swift era thing.
You're going to go for the era as our new children's laureate. So Brilliant. It's all new, isn't it? We won the football, we got the Tories out, and we've got Frank. It's absolutely marvellous. Right. Okay, so how are we going to do this? We're going to do this in a very structured way. I've asked each of our four contestants, speakers, to speak through a particular lens that they are expert in. Laura is going to be speaking through the producer/distributor's lens in dealing with this issue around YouTube or bust. Emily is going to be speaking through the strategist's lens. Jackie is going to be speaking through the, waving a flag for public service lens, let's call it. Is that okay? And finally, Frank is going to be looking at this through the storyteller's lens. And I hope that those four different perspectives will enable us to start to unpack this a little bit. One last thing. If you want to say something, you want to comment, you want to heckle, that's absolutely fine. Get it out. So we've got our lovely people in orange T-shirts that I can't see. There's one there who's got, that gentleman there. He's got hair like mine. You can't miss him. And there's a lady at the back there. Please just wave or something if you want to say something, because we'd love to hear this. It's got to be a conversation, okay? Right, first of all, let's get some terms of reference down. Emily, what does public service... No, I'm going to go to Jackie first. I just wanted to see the fear on your face.
Yeah. I don't know, Gary.
What does public service actually mean? You've got about 20 seconds.
You said 30 before.
Well, I know you're going to take 30.
I'm glad you asked me first. So we all understand the Reithian principles of public service media: educate, inform, entertain. But I think over the years when we've been in trouble with children's media in particular, those things have been sort of quite malleable and bent out of shape. So I think it's time for us to redefine what we mean by public service media. Because it should be the expression of us as a nation. It's the soul of the nation, if you like. It's our cultural glue. It shows us who we are and how to be. So I think when we are putting arguments to government for support, whether it's financial or regulatory, we need to be specific and explicit about what we're talking about. And I think, content, live action content as much as animation, because a lot of the conversation this week is about animation. I grew up in animation. I love it. It's got a really, really useful job in telling difficult stories and being beautiful and amazing. But we need more live action content that specifically reflects the lives of young people in this country.
So is reflecting the lives of young people in this country how you would define public service?
It's part of it. It's not a straightforward answer, Gary. Nothing ever is these days.
Okay, fine. So let's take that bit. Frank,
I'm finished.
We'll come back to you. Jesus Christ. Right.
We did a survey to the Youth Fund, and 75% of young people in this country think that they don't see themselves seen or heard and represented on television or any media in this country. So I think that's a problem.
So representation is...
We did a survey as part of the See Yourself on Screen competition we had, and we worked with Interfilm, who screened a lot of our content. I think there were about 400 children involved, and they were surveyed about their feelings about children's media, young people's media in general, and those stats were reflected in those surveys.
Frank?
Sorry.
That's all right. How would you define public service?
I hadn't really thought about that. Well, I hear everything that Kate's saying. I think for me, I've come primarily to listen today because I see my new role as like an advocacy role, and I want to hear what's going on, and I want to collect what is best practice and put that together and put it forward to government. Looking around, I think an essential thing for broadcasting, for every activity, every kind of storytelling, is better if it can be shared. It's better if it can be shared. I think, especially for preschool, if it can be shared with parents, if it's something that parents can bear to watch with the child, then that's a huge, huge difference.
Love that.
And so for me, that's what public service would be.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Co-viewing.
Co-viewing.
Okay.
We've had a lot of co-viewing over the last couple of days, for
Yeah.
sure. Laura, would you mind sharing how you understand public service?
Yeah, I'd say it's high-quality content. The public service remit needs to be high-quality content that meets our cultural values, that's produced in the UK, so it has economic benefit to the UK. And I think it really needs to also reflect or listen to audiences, so kids' audiences. So if we're wanting to really deliver a public service remit, we need to listen to our audiences and be where they are.
Wonderful. Emily?
Can I nick your one, Gary?
Eh?
Can I nick your one?
Yeah, go on.
All kids' content should be public service,
Yep.
right? All kids' content should be additive to the audience. It should have wholesome goodness at its core, but within that goodness, it needs to engage, it needs to delight, surprise, it needs to connect, you know? So that's that.
All right.
I feel like all kids' content, anyone who's making content for kids should have a duty of service within their
Okay,
content
right.
making.
So what I've heard these people say is representation, reflection, better if it can be shared, meeting our cultural values, and that actually, when we're all said and done, all content that is created for children should provide a public service to those children.
Yeah.
And all of the attendant things that go with that. Does that sound all right to you lot? Yeah. All right, okay, we're getting somewhere. Perfect. Right, so that's the framework we're working in, right? That at the end of the day, it's for the good of the kids. End of. Okay. Right, so Laura, let's come to you first. Now, I've lost my bloody questions now. All right, so you are here representing Ardman. Big player, in theory, but also little player in Nimble, and you're still, you know, you're employee-owned, you're a very different organisation in so many ways. You make these beautiful stories with this beautiful content. And we heard at the CMA, at the summit, we heard in Bundred from YouTube, I don't know if is he in here now? No? Well, yesterday he avoided a question, and when we were at the summit, he avoided my question as well. But apparently he wants us to make content for them. Right? How would you go about doing that? What are the parameters? What are the problems? What's got to change? Sounds like a really difficult thing to do when you are literally pissing in the wind.
Yeah. It is challenging, but I think one of the hardest challenges as a content owner and distributor is finding where your audiences are, and that's for any genre. But kids have made it really easy for us because they've said, oh, we're over here and we're on YouTube. So we know where to target them for our marketing campaigns. And I think that
Does that mean it's easy to get them as an you know where they are, you can get them, so you can get your eyeballs?
We need to speak to them where they are,
Right.
yeah. So it's easy to know where they are.
Okay.
Talk to them in the place where they are. But for independent British producers, I think that we all take great care in creating high quality content, but we need to be where they are. So if we're ultimately competing with a lot of companies who aren't reliant on a commission, and if they're not reliant, they have a wealth of content, marketing content, all full episodes to be on YouTube. And so as a parent as well as working at Ardman, if they're not interacting with your brand, if you're not on YouTube, they're going to be interacting with somebody else's brand. Mm-hmm. So you've got to be there, otherwise you'll just literally kind of...
So YouTube will bust, there's no bust, it's YouTube.
Yeah, and then it's how we get there.
And it's the how. Okay, so what needs to change to make these people here that are making stuff that, you know, how are we going to find it? How are people going to find it? How are kids going to find it? How are they going to build an audience? I was in a session this morning, and I'm talking about, well, it takes a year to build an audience. You don't have a year when you haven't got a commission to make content. How are they going to do it?
Well, that's the thing. I think we need to have that long-term view. So if we focus on the producer and commissioner relationship, I think that's where we need to kind of really come together and think long-term, because otherwise we are using public funds to create content, and it's a season one, it can't compete, it's not actually seen by children. And if we're all here to enrich children's lives, then we've got to be delivering that content, otherwise it's content made by other cultures, or maybe not at the same values as we want it to be. So
yeah, well, this is the point, this is what you were saying. So you're saying your point about what public service was that it has to be culturally relevant, reflective.
Yeah.
How on earth do you put a deal together that's going to have culturally relevant content on YouTube when you've got to fund it?
Yeah, so I think we need a long-term view to think almost like it's not just greenlighting the season one and that format. Right. It's also greenlighting a package of digital content to support it. So there's like the basic way of, I think, supporting a series on YouTube and social. And then there's also kind of going the next step. And I think that that's where we're all wanting to hear today, is how to do this properly and how really to compete with, frankly, our American counterparts who've got portfolio organisations who have a lot of cash to create content because they're not reliant on just a commissioning structure.
If Jackie's Yacht Fund wasn't kiboshed, she could have funded that digital content, couldn't she?
That would be great.
Not in the terms of the first iteration of the fund, but if there was another
Fund,
iteration,
a form
yes,
of?
then the possibility of opening up platforms and where the content is positioned is absolutely up for discussion, because we've got to be where the kids are. You're absolutely right.
Yeah, exactly.
I say that with big caveats.
So I think...
I think there was a bit of there is a bit of a pain point that's definitely there with the clients I'm working with, that commissions come with rights structures that are non-compatible with the YouTube strategy. I know a lot of producers that are having that, and I think that's something that needs to be addressed.
Hang on, so what, they've got a commission in a structure that doesn't make sense for the platform where all the kids are?
Well, it makes sense for the platform that's commissioning, but it doesn't make sense for the platform that kids are. Yeah, correct.
That's bonkers.
Yeah.
YouTube have it for free?
Great question.
Why should YouTube have it?
Why the bloody hell should they? Exactly.
I think there's a balance there, right? I completely agree. YouTube shouldn't have it for free, and I think, you know, I've been chatting with a few YouTube heads this conference, and one of the main issues at YouTube today is that having a kid's presence on YouTube or building a kid's presence on YouTube from scratch is non-viable from a revenue point of view. If we think YouTube's audience, right?
So they basically just want all the content for free.
Yeah, it's like Uber. How many cars does Uber own? Right? I'm not saying it's right, but like that's an issue, and I think the kids' revenue issue with YouTube is something that needs to be addressed, because that is one avenue where revenue can flow to the producer, and that can be viable as part of the pie.
So Laura, what's got to change?
So I think the right structures need to change within commissioning deals. So as a bare minimum, we really need a clip per episode, and we need a handful of episodes, 10 to 20% really of a series to be able to exploit on YouTube.
You're the producer. Why can't you say to the commissioner, this is the stuff you're getting?
That's what we need to be doing these days, and then we all need to be putting that into the, independent producers need to be having that into the agreements, really, because if we don't, then we aren't being, your kids aren't seeing the content that we all are lovingly creating. So I think that's a sort of bare minimum. And in addition, then we also need to talk about within the green light, okay, if we are going to have a meaningful and long-term pipe of brand awareness, so that we're constantly talking to audiences on YouTube, but then also on the platform, then we need content on YouTube. So is it spin-off content of behind the scenes, or is it crafts, recipes, meet the characters? Because that's certainly what bigger companies are doing. And so if we want to compete, we have to do that. But I get that that's hard, and we don't want to do it for free. But all our aim then is that we have tools that are...
Brands. You talk about brands and putting things out that are brands. Public service is not brands.
Well, if our remit is to appeal to children, to enrich their lives, then we've got to be able to find a way to do it. So what we can do is we can change metadata. We have InVision or audio, different tracks where we can be calling out the broadcaster and signposting them actually to say, go and watch over here. Here's more of the content over here that our public money is investing in. So I think we need to be where they are, and then signposting saying, oh, you like this? You're enjoying it? It's over here. There's loads more of it over here. And so working and using the tools that YouTube have created to do that, because we can say we don't like it, but ultimately our kids are watching something different.
Yeah.
Not British content.
Gary, can I say something? So, hello, it's Tim over here. So, England and the world have won the football. We've got a Labour government. Isn't it about time that as a society and as programme makers that we pushed against this idea that kids can go and play with the traffic? It's like, the idea of attention spans falling, literary standards falling. TikTok, the minimum age for TikTok is 13.
So they say.
You know what I mean?
Right, so what are you saying?
I'm saying as a society and as programme makers, we've got to push against YouTube saying we've got to give them all our content for nothing.
So my friend Dino sent me a note last night. He said, what you need to do, because we've got a new government and they're allowing onshore wind farms, is every 50th turbine, you need to allocate all the profit from that to kids' content and paint characters on the side of it. That's the sort of thing we need to be doing to think about it differently. Frank,
Oh my God.
can we... Welcome!
I told him it would be fun.
Love it. Right.
Sorry, can I just...
I'm going off piece a little bit because you were supposed to be fourth, but storytelling, what you've heard so far sounds to me like stories are going to have to be put in a box and chopped up in a particular way. How are we going to reinvigorate a child's understanding, or how are you going to help us reinvigorate children's understanding of stories and storytelling, all those wonderful things that you're very good at writing? What are you going to do?
Can I take a step back and talk to you about what I was doing this morning? Because, no, it's relevant. Actually, no, I was going to read you something, actually. Listen to this. Shall we carelessly allow children to hear any casual tale, to receive in their minds ideas for the most part the opposite of those we would wish them to grow up with? It's from Plato's Republic.
Yep.
So this conversation has been going on for quite a long time. And it's a reminder of the enormous power that you all have in your hands.
Yep.
The huge power for good that you have in your hands when you deal with story. So this morning I was at a nursery in Meadows. It's called Meadows Nursery. It's in a really deprived part of Sheffield. It was set up by the university as a kind of experiment in what could be done. And the people who are using that, the parents, are incredibly diverse. It's a very diverse mix, but what unifies them is that, by and large, they lack a lot of confidence. So it is, to start to return briefly to the theme of this, it's gone where the people are. It's fishing where the fish are. That's the first thing. They use books and storytelling as part of what they do, but they don't use them in a very passive way. So I watched this morning someone who'd cut up completely a copy of the Very Hungry Caterpillar. They'd cut it up because it had been just knackered by kids, and they'd put it all in a box and they're putting it out one by one, these little puppets. They've done this amazing stuff with dinosaur eggs, and they've empowered the parents to be part of that storytelling and to join in.
Yeah.
That was a very broken community. The pleasure that they've been able to deliver
Simple, isn't it?
has created a bond of trust, got people out of their houses. After it's been going for 2 years now, they're all going on a camping holiday together this summer. Like, that's from a completely fractured community. A huge change. So that's another thing. The power of pleasure to create trust and to create unity and to create bonds. You've got that. That's a huge thing. That's the thing.
Do you think this community has a responsibility in that regard? This community?
Oh, yeah, enormously. I don't think you should be shy about thinking what you've got there. So another thing is that to say about that is stories are stories.
Yep.
So whether you're telling that story in papier-mâché or in pixels, it's still a story. It doesn't matter. And that the way those stories worked in those communities was not passive. They weren't consuming those stories. They were taking them apart, examining them, putting them back together again, and then going out on a camping holiday. Amazing, right? So you've got that power. Listening today, I was thinking about that enormous power that you've got. The YouTube thing, the platform is a thing that you've got to deal with.
Yes,
a story has a beginning, a middle, and an end.
Yep.
And you can tell. So in that nursery, interestingly, they were telling the same story over and over again for weeks at a time, so that the kids became familiar with it and became a tool to them. So it was like, I think they were doing Jack and the Beanstalk, and they've been doing it for like 4 weeks, right? Just going back over and over it, pushing, asking questions, blah, 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 all that stuff, making it their story. So story's got a beginning, middle, and end. I think one of the problems that we're all facing is that the driver for YouTube, the metric for YouTube, is how long. I'm going to completely take issue with what Conor said. So it's true for teenagers. We like TikTok, we like shorts. I'm not a teenager, I don't know why I said we. But we like those short spans of attention. But YouTube is offering to preschool massive stretches of attention. I'm calling it attention, but it's really a kind of sedation. So if you've made a wonderful episode of, I don't know, Coco Melon, where it's brilliant, which like the Wheels on the Bus episode, which I love. I've got grandchildren, watch that, it's great. I love its calming effect, I love its benignness. That's great. But if you then bundle Coco Melon into a 5-hour package, there's a word for that, and the word is wrong.
and
That
addiction.
is just wrong, right? Yeah,
And
yeah. That's cocaine melon.
Cocaine melon, yeah.
Right? So I don't know how that. I've got literally no idea how that happens. Does that happen from the producers or from the channel? I don't know if that's an effect of the
We can have a conversation about that.
Not the
But it's all
logarithm.
about the money, isn't
the
it?
algorithm.
this is actually, sorry, this is just actually getting close to a question I had right at the beginning of this, which is that we're talking about YouTube. Obviously, Conor has said that most teenagers aren't watching YouTube. We're obviously talking about a younger audience here. If we're finding that kids are moving more onto YouTube and stuff like that, then who's allowing them? You know what I mean? To go off what Tim was saying, if we're putting stuff on YouTube, then we're basically saying to parents and stuff, it's fine to stick your kids in front of YouTube.
Yes, we are. That's exactly what we're discussing.
Yeah, I think I think Jonathan Haidt had this great sentence that they're massively oversupervised in real life and totally unsupervised when it comes to YouTube or the digital world. And that's problematic. But it also goes back to something that I said about public broadcast before. If the content isn't shareable, if it isn't something that you want to co-view, then there's two forces in the world, isn't there? Like the raw market wants to create smaller and smaller demographics to sell to people. And if public broadcast, if it's got one mission, it should be about cohesion, about bringing us back together. And parents will not.
Okay, let me ask a question. We're going to come to you in a second, Emily. Before we do that, I wish we could have house lights. Who thinks YouTube should be regulated? Yeah. Look at that. That's we're going to call it 100%.
Who doesn't think they should be regulated?
Yeah. All right.
YouTube.
Because on the one hand, as you say, it's terribly empowering, emancipating that people can get their content out there, but it's also open to this huge amount of abuse, right?
Yeah.
So let's turn to the strategist perspective on this, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Emily, you wrote, and I follow it, and I strongly urge you all to get Emily's newsletter because it makes me look clever, and that's really good. Emily wrote quite a very clear and distinct treatise about why YouTube is the only game in town now, really, and it's won the streamer wars, effectively.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, it has, as far as I can see from the data. And I'm not saying that makes me overjoyed.
No.
I have what I would term a love-hate relationship with YouTube. There's lots about YouTube that's great. And I know it feels uncomfortable that the formats that it's brought in is disrupting things. But, it's some creators have come through, and the people that Conor is speaking about it are people that have come through, and the people that young people want to watch, and they're redefining what a content format is. And I think that's great, and that's evolution. But the stats are there, right? So 86%, I think it's definitely 80 plus.
It's 83.
83% of kids in the US are on there regularly. Yeah. If you want to think about household penetration, Netflix in the US is in around 51% of homes. YouTube access tracks in line with internet access. YouTube's available on any device with the internet. You don't need a log-on. You don't need an app. You can just get on there, right? So it's at around 90%, tracks in line with that. And there's around 400 million kids on there every month. So it's, I hear the concern. I absolutely hear the concern. But the genie's out of the bottle, right? And I think, regulation, regulation. YouTube should have more regulation. That's I totally agree, and I think solving the revenue issue is something that is, I think, an addressable thing for them. But kids content creators need to be on YouTube.
So let me ask you
where the kids are.
Yes.
So, if YouTube is the dominant game in town,
it is,
and it is dominated,
it's not if it is.
It is. There's no question.
It is.
Yeah.
But then, and it's not paying for content, which it's not. Then we will all go bust. We have to find a way to get revenue out of YouTube into the hands of producers.
Yes, we do.
So it can contribute to the budget of creating high-quality public service content.
Producers, though.
Yes.
But producers also need to evolve as well, right? And if the type of content, like public service content that the public doesn't see, isn't serving the public, right? And if viewers and what viewers want to see is evolving, producers need to evolve with that too, and not just stick in the formula.
What was that?
Prominence.
Prominence.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I think the revenue issue
Prominence.
is probably one of the first things that needs to be solved. Greg, see you back there.
So
roughhousing.
hang on a minute. Picking up on that prominence, whoever that heckler was.
Whoever he is.
I don't know, he's got a nice
Serious
haircut.
serious question. What are we regulating YouTube to do? Okay.
What is what?
What are we regulating YouTube
Greg need to
to
do?
do? Right, so we're
getting through
talking
this
about
one.
revenue, and
What
that's
are we
very good.
regulating YouTube to
What
do?
are we regulating YouTube to do?
Well, YouTube should probably, I would say, over-promenade. Is that a word?
answer for that.
Over-promenade anything from a UK-based
Absolutely, that's
channel
exactly what I would
in the
agree with.
UK. That's
Yeah.
and like knowing the platform, that should be an
Yeah, it
easy thing
should
to
be.
do. I think the revenue issue is problematic because basically, if we say 30% of kids are on YouTube, I've spoken with people this week. I think it's not much less than 30% of their. Like, if you think of the whole audience on YouTube, 30% is, I think, a decent amount of what we think of kids is on there. YouTube is paying around 2% of its revenue for 30% of its audience. That's problematic, and that's because digital advertising laws exist, which are right, and we can target kids, but they just need to be. I think they need to be pushed to over-index the value that they're giving to.
Right, so hang on, let's get some structure here so we answer the Welshman's question. we had revenue, right? Some kind of way of
Quite important,
right?
yeah.
At one point. I'm hearing curation, some way of filtering, making sure it's
Prominence,
prominence.
Yeah.
That's not what I mean.
Discoverability.
I'm not talking
Yeah.
about that. I'm talking about quality. I don't mean discoverability.
Okay.
Do you mean equality of discoverability? Do you mean that everybody, like if we're all in YouTube, we've all got the right to be discovered?
But that's
Yeah, I think
the way they approach it.
Yeah, in order to really get the algorithm working for you, you need to have rights-free content and it have a boost. And so if you've got it restricted in any way, then you're sort of clipping the wings. So in order to enforce and give a lift to British content, saying, well, 30% of all content merchandised on YouTube Kids has to be from UK producers would be, I think, an easy fix to make.
But nobody's going to get involved in merchandise until you've got
The
a
numbers.
tipping point of audience, right? So that can take 18 months, can take 5 years to build up. You know, Pepper's 20, Bluey's nearly 6.
No, by merchandise, I mean like surfacing on the YouTube Kids platform.
Got it.
So it's a curated, a forced position. You can pitch in for certain thematic moments, but I think that YouTube could easily say, okay, well, of all of the 100 moments that are surfaced, 50 of them have to be from UK, and then in France, 50 of them from France. You know, we do it in a locally relevant way. In fact, we can look at Europe, the European film and TV quota. All the global streamers in Europe have to have 30% of content be from the local, from Europe. I think if the market is not delivering what we want it to deliver for public service remit, then we have to make the market conditions work for it. So market intervention of delivering, you know, all global streamers have to have 30% British content, then that would be, yeah.
Be taxed properly.
And be taxed properly. What does that mean?
Well, I'm not averse to a levy on the streamers, but we're not talking about the streamers like the SVODs just now. We're talking about YouTube. And I think the thing, we've got a real sort of disconnect now. We're talking, on one hand, about traditional public service models of funding and how that fits with an AVOD model. And YouTube, it's a machine, and we are talking about feeding a machine with public service content without really addressing the problems that the machine presents for young audiences. And that's problematic.
We just have a jump in with a question, sorry, just down here right at the front.
I was just wondering, I know that a lot of it's about the money on your side as well, but if YouTube's the most dominant platform at the moment, wouldn't that be because it's free for people to use? You know, if talking about co-viewing or one of the talks yesterday talking about how parents are involving their children more in what they're putting on TV, children having a choice in that as well. Because before school, like those programs that are on television and on programming, they're there, but after school there's not much specifically aimed at children, so it's down to streaming services really. But all of those require a subscription, whereas YouTube, that can be streamed up to the TV without having to pay for. All of the money towards the creators comes through ads that people don't mind watching because there's no subscription service added on to that. So I think it's just that it's more accessible for all types of families, or more types of families than people who can afford all these different streaming services repeatedly.
Yeah, that's completely correct, yeah. And I think that what you've said about like families who can afford. You know, I think that's like the Cocoa Melon situation, the 5-hour Cocoa Melon situation is wrong, but you know, it's also families who are stuck in difficult situations, parents working, you know, like there's lots of reasons why parents have a need to have their kids engaged in something that they feel is safe and benign. And, you know, cocaine melon or whatever, like there's way worse content for kids on YouTube than Cocoa Melon. I can tell you that as a fact that specifically targets kids. And so, you know, it addresses some of the issues, like, you know, changing the content makeup is one thing, but like, you know, if 2 parents have to work 2 full-time jobs and they have kids, that's actually a way bigger problem in terms of media consumption, because they have a need to entertain the kids at times when whatever's happening.
And that's a perennial problem that we've had in the last 25 years I've been doing
exactly.
this sort of thing. Right, so Frank, you said something really interesting. You talked about confidence.
Yeah.
The way that the parents needed confidence, and they gained confidence through the shared experience in the nursery that you were in this morning. Can you help us understand how, you know, if you've got the Wild West of YouTube, how on earth do we help parents understand how to curate this content that their children are, in theory, what do you call it, cocaine melon? Addicted to. How do we help parents? Because ultimately it's their call, right, not ours.
Yeah, no, 100%. First, I took trouble to say that it wasn't about the content of Cocoa Melon. You know, it's not at all about the content. It's about that.
The 5-hour block.
5 hours is a long time.
I agree.
Okay. I forgot what I was going to say now.
How do we help parents get confident in media literacy for their kids?
I mean, I keep going back to the same thing, that's what the public service thing is, that it should, public service for me, has an invitation to co-viewing, whereas Cocoa Melon at 5 hours is an invitation to go. And I know that some people need.
Yeah, but somebody is flicking on to a 5-hour Cocoa Melon because, well, for a few reasons. First of all, because they don't want to put on a 3-minute one because then their kid could end up somewhere else.
Yeah, sure.
And they feel a need to put that on, right?
Yeah.
I'm not saying it's right, but like that need.
But taking that particular show out of it, and let's talk about it in the abstract rather. But those producers or those YouTube channels that do that because they know at the back end there they can see those things are watched for that long. That's why they do it.
Or they're prioritised.
Well, or they may do, but nonetheless, what they're thinking about their revenue every time. So they do it for a reason.
Yeah, and that's another regulation that could go on YouTube, is that there should be a limit on upper volume of content that they're prioritising for kids.
Before I came today, I hadn't really thought about the whole revenue side of it because that's not my life. But listening to you, I think it's a really, really urgent topic because the freeness of it is what makes it. I've just remembered. You must not tell anybody this, but I've got a kind of quite a rascally sister who a few years ago for a Christmas present, my mum said, oh, she got me a brilliant thing for Christmas. What is it? It's called a YouTube. And she told my mum that she put it on the telly and that was her present.
But don't tell anybody, all right? We've got to keep it between ourselves.
I believe she did. I can't believe I shared that. Well, you called it the machine. We have no idea what world we're sending our children out into. We haven't got a clue and we are not really tracking what's been happening to our children as a society through the pandemic. And one of the things that's happened during the pandemic is that we've really accelerated their relationship with screens, for good and for bad. You know, for all kinds of good. And the co-viewing thing is such a cheering thing. You know, and I know that that's gone up, but we've not talked about what that means. And by YouTube getting all this content free, we are driving towards the machine. You know, you called it a machine. We are, by not charging, by not pushing back, we are fitting in with the machine.
Oh,
and I've come across, like, I'm so blessed to have grown up in a generation where the animation that I was watching was incredibly human. I had a thumbprint, you know, it was what was it, Rhubarb and Custard with the flaring crayons and Oliver Postgate and all that stuff. You know, it was very, very human looking. That I see content in which, if it's not produced by AI, the people involved in it are thinking like AI. They're asking themselves AI questions. They're blending themselves with the machine. And
we just have another question here, sorry.
Sorry.
think kind of going back to Conor's talk, though, there's a real push towards things like TikTok and shorter form because they are felt to be more authentic. And so a lot of this conversation comes back to when we're trying to regulate, how do we not just turn it back into linear television? How do we, because meeting the audience where they are is because they're finding authenticity somewhere. So how do we do this in a way that we're not turning it back into the thing that led audiences away?
Hang on a sec. So you're saying what? That they're looking for authenticity?
Yeah, that's what we're finding. The kids are going to shorter form content because they feel it's more authentic. Whether it is or not is up for debate. But that authenticity that Frank was speaking to, right, of the human touch on animation, they're finding that in the short form content.
Yeah, okay.
Creator-led content.
So what you're saying, there's a movement towards a more real.
Right, and so how do we as producers not stay in the same mindset of these?
Because that's the way everything's moving. Okay.
Up, down.
Yeah, okay. All right. So YouTube has more questions to answer. Can I have a quick show of hands, right? If tomorrow, taking Mr. Cottrell-Boyce's war cry there, if tomorrow, right, we all pulled our content off of YouTube, who would be prepared to do that? One. Have you got anything on YouTube? Yeah. That's a brave man, Greg. Well done. But the rest of us, who's got content on YouTube right now? Put your hand up. Okay. Who would remove it? Keep your hands up if you would remove it. 1, 2. Why would you remove it, sir?
Because I believe in society.
Okay, that's a good enough reason. All right, okay. But you'd be skint.
I'm skint already.
Okay.
We have another question down here right at the front.
I've just done a quick Google search. 75% of 8 to 10-year-olds are on social media in one form or another. So whether we like it or not, this is a global issue.
Yeah.
And, it's not a quick fix. So if you take all your content off of social media, young people are still going to be on there and looking for content.
Yeah.
And they're going to go to something that's a lot.
Conor, do you call social media? Do you count YouTube as social media?
Yes, I'd class social media, YouTube as social media. So people are going somewhere else, which isn't vetted, which isn't safe in the hands of all the people in this room today.
Yeah.
They'll be finding this content in a completely different way.
Or they'll be finding different, worse content.
Yeah.
They just won't be watching yours. And as a parent, I use a tool where I literally push British content to my kids' YouTube profiles to influence what they're watching so they can watch British content because a lot of American content is rights-free. It's got the algorithm working towards it. That's what they're served. So the responsibility is a big burden on a parent to do that. So I do think regulatory changes have to be made because not every parent is as aware.
Yeah.
That's what I was asking you about. Do you think that's doable at a macro level?
I mean, it has to be doable, doesn't it? We have to find a way to do it.
We have to find a way to do it.
Yeah.
Well, we stopped advertising.
We just jump in with another question just here.
Sorry. I've one that's related to that, actually. Hi. I don't know. Can you hear me over here?
Yep, we can hear you.
Oh, yes, sorry. So we're talking about...
Oh, grand.
Oh,
hello.
Somebody over there.
We're talking about the eyes of the children on YouTube. But do you think... there's a responsibility on the parents who are letting the kids watch YouTube and not understanding the dangers of YouTube. Like, as program creators and... working with broadcasters and the streamers and public service, we understand how carefully curated the content is that's going out there. And we understand that it's not curated, the content on YouTube. But other parents don't understand that.
They don't.
So do we somehow need to get that message across to those parents first before we start worrying about tracking children's eyes away from YouTube to the public service broadcasters?
100%. But look, there's something good happening, and that is that we have now Gen Z parents are the first wholly digital generation. What we're seeing in some of our work is that they are aware of this now that they weren't previously. So I think we have been through hell, and we are still there, and COVID didn't help. But I think that we will see this first generation of truly digitally native parents graduate and hopefully understand the good and the bad, and maybe they'll be receptive to that sort of messaging. Building on that, I want to turn to Welsh Spice. Sorry, Jackie. And the fourth question, remember, we're looking through these different lenses, and it seems appropriate now to ask Jackie to look through that public service lens, which hasn't gone away, by the way, has it? That's been the thing that we've been continually talking about here. You led the Yak Fund, and... if my numbers are right, for every quid invested, it saw about £11.50 of wider benefit, right? Right, put £1 in, get £11.50 out. Yes. That would even work for the Tories, wouldn't it?
You'd think so.
You'd think so, but they killed the bloody thing.
Nadine Dorrit.
Sorry. She's so stupid. Anyway. Sorry. I didn't mean to say that.
Came out.
Sorry. So when we said, you said something, when we spoke, you said something that really resonated with me. You said, and I quote, "We just need to make the good popular and the popular good." What do you mean by that?
I said it, but I was quoting the legendary Hugh Weldon. And that basically was a discussion on what good looks like in terms of public service. It's excellence in content. You think about the subject, you think about the craft you're addressing that subject in, but moreover, you think about the audience and its impact on them. And it's about making the popular, improving the quality, improving the sort of content you're going out. And I think it's a keystone of public service content. The other thing he also said was, programs that are calculated, and I'm thinking AI now, I really am, programs that are calculated rather than made are slums of the spirit and slums of the mind. So take a moment to think about that, everybody. The other thing I like to think of YouTube in is an analogy with the Octonauts, which you'll enjoy. YouTube is a vast sea of stuff, isn't it?
Yeah.
You've got the amazing, the awesome things like seahorses, which are beautiful and inspiring, and they live their lives differently to most other creatures. And then you've got sharks, which might be dangerous. You've got unexploded World War II mines. So do we throw our children into that ocean without swimming lessons? Because I mean, when I was a kid, and when we were all kids, because we're all of a certain vintage, aren't we? We had swimming pools where we learned to swim, but there's none of that now, is there? So digital education is a thing we should be doing.
Yeah.
We need swimming lessons for the kids. There are some parents that need swimming lessons too. And I think that's something that this government could address by reintroducing things like Sure Start, which was, it could be part of a parenting package for good. Should we put shark nets in the sea to stop the nasty stuff coming through? Should we have signposts to the Seahorse Aquarium and surface and show the kids the way to the good stuff? There are all sorts of things we can do via regulation. And, like the Octonauts, we can protect our young people from the worst things that are out there. And it's not hard to do. Those tech people are very, very clever.
They're not. I'm not sure they are.
I'm not sure they are. No.
I think somebody made YouTube, and the person who knows how to it's so vast, and you see this in other pockets of Google, where they've just built this massive thing, and then people have left the company, and no one knows what this bit does. No one wants to touch it.
Do you think the notion of a public service, a algorithm, is impossible?
Honestly, yeah. A public service algorithm, I think, is impossible. I think you need to look at the back end, things that me and Laura are talking about a bit like UK content, the way the channels work and the way they surface, and look at forcing it in that way rather than doing public service. But I also would come back, and I have the concept of quality, and quality is good, but quality needs to evolve too. Just because you could make a good show for TV doesn't mean you can make a good YouTube video. Yep. It doesn't mean you can make a good TikTok. I think that's what Conor was saying.
Can both things exist in this world? They should, right?
Yeah. That can evolve.
So is it okay if I make a quick point? One of the things over here, hello, it's right that side here. Hello. One of the things I wanted to mention was I feel like the conversation we're having here is based around producers and business, etc., and we're missing the wider picture around, particularly with a new government in place, which is kind of different departments. So we've hardly spoken anything about schools, primary schools, nurseries, and the fact that there is a captive audience there. I've got a daughter, she's 7. When she sees something in school, she comes home and she continues that journey. And I've also seen schools starting to use YouTube, which feels to me like there's a space, really obvious space there, where we can regulate, we can make rules, we can work with government to kind of go, this is an algorithm that works, this is content that is okay for teachers and primary school educators and nurseries to go, this is what we recommend. So we build that habit in spaces that we know are safe with those that are trusted people like teachers and carers.
There are so many elements to this that we just don't have the time to discuss, right? We've got 45 minutes.
If we look at the Timpson subject around how we've got somebody in at the prison service, everyone's kind of applauded it. It's a great appointment because he understands business and he understands the prison service. Yeah. We should be looking at that cross-collaboration as well.
Love that. Well done. Very good. Love that. Right, we've only got about 5 minutes left, and we could keep talking for hours. And I want to kind of start to pull things together. I'm going to leave out one of the questions that we had. Look, we've sort of been right around the houses, and we haven't even scratched the surface, right? We just haven't even scratched the surface. And you've got 4 people here that all care deeply about public service provision for children. They care about our industry. Different perspectives. What I'm going to ask them to do is to share with you the only thing that they would ask you to be thinking about after today, because our hope, I guess, is that, to your point there, maybe we talk again. Maybe there's another summit, Greg. Don't know. Maybe that's a good idea. But we have to bloody well do something. Otherwise, we're just going to keep chasing our tails, and the kids are not going to be served. And that is wrong. Who shall I start with? Who wants to do their one thing?
I'm basically going to parrot what I just said, which is like that concept of quality like is evolving as media evolves, and like a good TikTok, a good YouTube video, I think you can intersect that with what we traditionally know as TV formats, and I think there still is lots and lots of runway for TV formats. But you know, you need to evolve. You need to learn. You need to kind of look at what the platforms are doing and play with the platforms in the way they want to play. You can start doing that on Monday without any other policies or anything coming in. Sorry, it's Thursday. You can do it tomorrow. You know, but like if you play with the platforms the way they want to be played with, then that's an area you can start learning in, and you can start connecting with kids in.
So the quality that is attendant to that particular medium.
Yeah, learn it. It's a new medium, exactly.
And it would, exactly, right, okay. Sherry Hope Culver did a whole thing on what is quality content, so we need to go and dig that out, and it's brilliant. Okay. What's the one thing, Laura?
We need to compete.
Compete?
Compete. So compete with bigger organisations, as most of us are independent producers. So we need to compete. We need to collaborate with our commissioning partners.
Funny, that's the theme of the conference, that, collaborate.
Yeah, so more collaboration with a long-term view, so that we're not just stuck on a season 1. We get better return on our public funds.
So if someone out there's got a great idea, they think they can collaborate with Ardman, what would you say?
Let's chat.
What's the one thing, please?
Our public service media is cultural glue, and our cultural glue has come unstuck. And that's a societal problem that we need to address with some urgency. And commerce is a thing, you know, our industry is in an existential crisis, but we need to think about the audience, because I think that argument is the one that will win the day. We need to think about the value that public service media gives to our young audiences and our young people in this country. And that's the argument we should take to government.
Come on in, Frank.
Just what Spy said, really. I completely agree. I think the only thing I'd add is the urgency of this. I think, you know, use all the tools that you've talked about today, whether it's about revenue, whether it's about curation, whether it's about rising to the creative challenge of speaking in the YouTube vernacular, and creating content that speaks in that way. But just remember that this is urgent. We're on the brink of something enormous. You know, YouTube is not a human being. It doesn't have a phone number. We can't go up and argue with it. We have to make a stand for our humanity in the face of a machine.
Thank you. Okay, so the 4 things we're thinking about are quality, and how that pertains to the new paradigms of these platforms that there are that aren't going away. We've got to work with them. We want more collaboration. We want to think about our audience first, and we've got to do it urgently. Yeah, otherwise we're really in the shit. Okay. That, I think, concludes our hour. Thank you all very much. Hopefully you enjoyed that. Please keep talking about it. Hassle the Media Foundation. Thank you very much. Good night. Well done. Thank you.